All right, guys, good evening. You know what time it is. It's another one of those reading sessions, fireside chats with Dr. Joe Dispenza. Tonight, we're reading Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. We're on to the introduction. And in the introduction, Dr. Joe says the greatest habit that you can ever break is the habit of being yourself. When I think about all the books on creating the life we desire, I realize that many of us are looking for approaches that are grounded in sound scientific evidence, methods that are truly work. But already, new research into the brain, body, and mind, and the consciousness, and a quantum leap of understanding of physics is suggesting expanded possibilities on how to move toward what we innately know as real potential. As a practicing chiropractor who runs a busy integrated health clinic, and as an educator in fields of neuroscience, brain function, biology, and brain chemistry, I've been privileged to be at the forefront of some of this research, not by just studying the fields mentioned above, but by also observing the effects of this new science once applied by common people like you and me, and that's the moment when possibilities of this new science become reality. As a consequence, I have witnessed some remarkable changes on an individual's health and quality of life when they truly change their minds. Over the last several years, I've had the opportunity to interview a host of people who overcame significant health conditions that were considered either terminal or permanent. Per the contemporary model of medicine, these recoveries were labeled spontaneous remissions. However, upon my extensive examination of their inner journeys, it became apparent to me there was a strong element of mind involved, and that their physical changes weren't so spontaneous after all. The discovery furthered my postgraduate studies into brain imaging, neuroplasticity, epigenetics, and psychoneuroimmunology. I found that something had to be happening in the brain and body that could be zeroed in on and replicated. In this book, I want to share some of what I learned along the way and show you, by exploring how mind and matter are interrelated, how you can apply these principles not only to your body, but to any aspect of your life. Go beyond knowing to know how. Many readers of my first book, Evolve Your Brain, The Science of Changing Your Mind, voiced the same honest and heartfelt request, along with a fair amount of positive feedback, such as the person who wrote, "I really like your book. I read it twice. It had lots of science, and very thorough and inspiring. But can you tell me, how do I do it? How do I evolve my brain?" In response, I began teaching a workshop, a series of practical steps anyone can take to change their level in their brain and body that will lead to lasting results. Consequently, I've seen people experience unexplainable healings, release old mental and emotional wounds, resolve so-called impossible difficulties, create new opportunities, and experience wonderful health, just to name a few. You will meet some of these people in the next pages. It is not necessary that you read my first book to digest this material. But if you have been exposed to my work, I wrote Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself to serve as a practical how-to companion to evolve your brain. It is in my earnest objective to make this new book simple and easy to understand. There will be times, though, that I'll have to give you bits of knowledge that acts as a forerunner to a concept I want to develop. The purpose is to build a realistic working model of personal transformation that will help you understand how we change. Breaking the habit of being yourself is a product of my passions, a sincere effort to demystify the mystical, so that every person understands how that we have within our reach all that we need to make significant changes in our life. This is a time in history when not only do we want to know, but we want to know how. How do we apply and personalize both emerging scientific concepts and age-old wisdom to succeed at living a more enriched life? When you and I come into contact with these dots, we will connect them of what science is discovering about nature, of reality, about gives us permission to apply those principles into our day-to-day existence. Then each of us becomes both a mystic and a scientist in our own life. So I invite you to experiment with everything that you will learn in this book, to objectively observe the results. What I mean is that if you take an effort to change your inner world of thoughts and feelings, your external environment should begin to give you the feedback, to show you that your mind had an effect on your outer world. I mean, why else would you do it? If you take intellectual information and learn a philosophy and then innate that knowledge into your life by applying it enough times until you master it, you will ultimately move from being a philosopher to an initiate to a master. So stay tuned. There is sound scientific evidence that this is possible. I do ask you up front to keep an open mind so that we can build step by step the concepts that outline this book. All of this information is something to do with. Otherwise, it's just good dinner conversation, isn't it? Once you open your mind to the way things really are and let go of your conditioned beliefs with which you are accustomed to framing reality, you should see the fruits of your labor. That is my wish for you. The information in these pages is here to inspire you to prove to yourself that you are a divine creator. You should never wait for science to give us permission to do the uncommon. If we do, we are turning science into another religion. We should be brave enough to contemplate our lives, do what we thought was outside the box, and do it repeatedly. And when we do that, we are on our way to a greater personal power. True empowerment comes when we start to look deeply at our beliefs, when we find their roots in the conditioning of religion, culture, society, education, family, the media, and even our genes. The way we weigh those old ideas against some new paradigms may serve us better. Times are changing. As individuals awaken to greater reality, we are part of a much larger sea of change. Our current systems and models of reality are breaking down, and it is some time for something new to emerge. As you cross the board, our models in politics, economics, religion, science, education, medicine, and even our relationship with the environment are showing us a different landscape than just 10 years ago. Letting go of the outdated, old model and embracing a new one sounds easy. But as I pointed out in Evolve Your Brain, much of what we have learned and have experienced has been incorporated into our biological self, and we wear it like a garment. But we also know that what is true today might not be true tomorrow. Just as we have come to question our perception of atoms as solid pieces of matter, reality, and our interaction with its progression and of ideas and beliefs, we also know that to leave a familiar life we have grown accustomed to and waltz into something new is like a salmon swimming upstream. It takes effort, and frankly, it's uncomfortable. And to top it off, ridicule, marginalization, opposition, and degradation from those who we cling to just so they can greet us along the way. Who, with such an unconventional bent, is willing to meet such adversity in the name of some concept they cannot embrace with their senses, yet which is alive in their minds? How many times in history have individuals considered heretics or fools for thinking outside the box, and thus took abuse from the unacceptable, and then emerged only to be called geniuses or masters? Will you dare to be so original? Change is a choice instead of a reaction. It seems that human nature is that we balk at changing until things get really bad and we're so uncomfortable that we can no longer go on with business as usual. This is true for individuals as it is for our society. We wait for crisis, trauma, loss, dis-ease, and tragedy before we get down and look at who we really are, what we are doing, how we are living, what we are feeling, and what we are believing or knowing in order to embrace true change. Often it takes a worst case scenario for us to begin making changes that support our health, relationships, career, family, and future. My message is, why wait? We can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or we can involve our brain in a state of joy and inspiration. Most embrace the former. To go with the latter, we just have to make up our minds, change what we entail will bring a little bit of discomfort, some inconvenience, a break in the predictable routine, and a period of not knowing. Most of us are already familiar with the temporary discomfort of not knowing. We stumbled through early efforts to read until the skill became second nature. When we first practiced the violin or the drums, our parents wished they could send us to a soundproof room. Pity the haps of the patient who draws his blood by a medical student, has a prerequisite knowledge and still lacks the finesse that you will only gain through practice. Absorbing knowledge, knowing, and then gaining practical experiences by applying what you learned until the particular skill has become ingrained in you, which is the know-how, is probably how you acquired most of the abilities you feel like are part of your being, your knowingness. In much of the same way, in this book, you're going to learn how to change your life, which involves knowledge and the application of that knowledge. That is why this book is divided into 3 overreaching sections. Parts 1, Parts 2, I will build a sequence forming a bigger and broader model of understanding from you in a personal level. Some ideas seem repetitive, and they are here to remind you about something that I don't want you to forget. Repetition and the circuits in your brain are formed by making neurons. And these connections are important, so at your weakest hour, you don't talk yourself out of greatness. When you ease into part 3 of this book with a sound knowledge base, you can experience for yourself the truth of what you learned earlier. So part 1 is the science of you. Our exploration will start in an overview of philosophical and scientific paradigms related to the latest research about the nature of reality, who you are, why you change, and why it's been so difficult for so many, and what is possible for a human being. Part 1 is an easy read, I promise. Chapter 1, The Quantum You, introduces you a bit of quantum physics. Nothing to be alarmed about. I start there because it's important that I begin you to embrace the concept that your subjective mind has an effect on your objective world. The observer effect in quantum physics states that where you direct your attention is where you place your energy. As a consequence, you affect the material world, which, by the way, is made of mostly energy. If you entertain that idea for a moment, you want to start focusing on what you want instead of what you don't want. You might even find yourself thinking, if an atom is 99.99999% energy and 0.0000001% physical substance, then why am I actually nothing instead of something? So why do I keep my attention on that small percentage of the physical world when I am so much more? Is defining my present reality about what I perceive with my senses the biggest limitation that I have? In chapters 2 through 4, we will look at what it means to change, to become greater than your environment, the body and time. You'll probably entertain the idea in your thoughts to create your own life. But in chapter 2, Overcoming Your Environment, I will discuss if you allow the outer world to control how you think, how you act, and how you feel. Your external environment is patterning you into circuits that make your brain think equal to everything familiar to you. The result is that you create more of the same. You hardwire your brain to reflect the problems, the personal conditions, and the circumstances in your life. So to change, you must be greater than all things in your life. All of the physical. Chapter 3, Overcoming Body, continues to look at how we unconsciously live by a set of memorized behaviors, thoughts, and emotional reactions, all running like a computer program behind the scenes of our conscious awareness. That's why it's not enough to think positive, because most of who you are might reside subconsciously as negativity in the body. By the end of this book, you will know how to enter into the operating system of the subconscious and make permanent changes to where those programs exist. Chapter 4 is Overcoming Time. In this chapter, we'll examine how we either live in the anticipation of the future events or repeatedly revisit the past memories, or both, until the body begins to believe it is living in a time other than the present moment. The latest research supports the notion that we have a natural ability to change the brain and body with thought alone, so that it looks biologically like some future event that's already happened, because you can make the thought more real than anything else. You can change who you are from brain cell to gene, given the right understanding. When we learn how to use our attention and access the present, you will enter the door to the quantum field, where all potentials exist. Chapter 5 is Survival versus Creation. In this chapter, it illustrates the distinction between living in survival and living in creation. Living in survival entails living in stress and functioning as a materialist, believing that the outer world is more real than your inner world. And when you're under the gun of the fight or flight nervous system, begin to run by its cocktail of intoxicating chemicals, you are being programmed to be concerned only about the body, only about things or people in your environment, and your obsession with time. Your brain and body are out of balance. You're living in the predictable life. However, when you are truly in the elegant state of creation, you are no body, no thing, no time. You forget about yourself. You become pure consciousness, free from the chains of an identity that needs the outer reality to remember who it thinks it is. In part 2, Your Brain and Meditation, in chapter 6, 3 brains thinking to doing to being. You will embrace the concept that you have 3 brains that allow you to move from thinking to doing to being. Even better, when you focus your intention to the exclusion of your environment, your body, and time, you can easily move from thinking to being without having to do anything. In the state of mind, your brain goes through not a distinguish between what is happening in the inner and outer world, but what is happening thus gets rehearsed, and a desired experience via thought alone will pop up in your emotions before you physically manifest it. Now you are moving into a new state of being because your body and mind are working as one. When you begin to feel like some potential future is in reality is happening to you in the moment because you are focusing on it, you are rewriting your automatic habits, attitudes, and other unwanted subconscious programs. Chapter 7 is The Gap. Explores how we break free from the emotions that you've memorized, which have become your personality, and how you choose the gap between who you are in your inner world, in your private appearance, and who you present yourself as to society. The gap. We all reach a certain point when we stop learning and realize that nothing external can take away from those familiar feelings from our past. If you can predict the feeling of every experience in your life, there's no room for anything new to occur. You are viewing your life from the past instead of the future. This is the juncture point where the soul either breaks free or falls into oblivion. You will learn to liberate your energy from the emotions, thus narrow the gap between how you appear and who you are. Ultimately, you will create transparency. When you appear as who you are truly free. Part 2 concludes with Chapter 8, Meditation, Demystifying the Mystical and Waves of Your Future, in which my purpose is to demystify meditation so that you know what you are doing and why, discussing brainwave technology made simple, and I will show you how your brain changes electromagnetically when you are focused versus when you're in an aroused state due to stressors in your life. You will learn that the true purpose of meditation is to get beyond the analytical mind and enter into the subconscious mind, where you can make real and permanent changes. If you get up from your meditation as the same person who sat down, nothing has happened to you on any level. When you meditate and connect to something greater, you can create, then memorize such coherence between your thoughts and feelings that nothing in your outer reality, no person, no thing, no condition, at any time or place could move you from that level of energy. Now you're mastering your environment, your body, and time. And part 3 is stepping towards a new destiny. All of the information in parts 1 and 2 is provided in order to equip you with the necessary knowledge so that you demonstrate all this information in part 3, which supplies the how-to, and you will have a direct experience on what you've been taught. Part 3 is all about applying yourself to an actual discipline, a mindful exercise that will use in your daily life. It is a step-by-step meditation process so that you can actually do something with the theories given to you. By the way, did your mind balk when I mentioned all that multi-step processes? If so, it's not like what you think it is. Yes, you will learn a sequence of actions, but soon you will experience them as 1 or 2 simple steps. After all, you probably perform multiple actions every time you prepare to drive your car. For example, you adjust your seat, you put on your seatbelt, you check your mirrors, you start the engine, turn on your headlights, you look around, you put on your signal, and then you move. All of these are a multi-step system that took you a while to learn when you were beginning to drive, but now has been muscle memory. You may be asking yourself, why do I need to read parts 1 and 2? I'll just jump to part 3. I know, I'd probably be thinking the same. I decided to offer the relevant knowledge in the first 2 parts of the text so that when you get to the 3rd section, nothing will be left to conjecture, nothing will be left to dogma, and nothing will be left to speculation. When you begin the steps of the meditation, you will know exactly what you are doing and why. When you comprehend the what and the why, the how will become easy. Therefore, you will have more power and intention behind the practical experience of truly changing your mind. By using the steps in part 3, you will be more prone to accept your innate ability to change so-called impossible situations in your life. You might even give yourself permission to entertain potential realities that you've never considered prior to your exposure to these new concepts. You might just begin to do the uncommon. And that is my aim for you by the time you finish this book. So if you can resist the temptation to jump to part 3, I promise that when you get there, you'll be quite empowered by what you learn. I've seen this approach work throughout the world in a series of 3 workshops I led. When people gain the right knowledge in a way that they can understand it completely, and then have the opportunity for effective instructions to apply what they comprehend, then like magic, they can see the fruits of their efforts form in the changes that serve feedback as their lives. Part 3 will give you the meditative skills to change something in your mind and body and to produce an effect outside of you. Once you can notice that you did inside work to affect the outside work, you will do it again. When a new experience manifests in your life, you'll embrace the new energy you feel from an elevated state of emotion, such as empowerment, awe, and immense gratitude, and the energy will drive you to do it again and again, and now you're on the path of true evolution. Each meditation step is designed in part 3 is associated with a piece of meaningful information presented earlier in this book. Because you will have cultivated the meaning behind exactly what you're doing, there should be no cause for you to lose your vision. Like many skills you've learned, in the beginning, it may take all of your conscious effort to stay focused on how to learn to meditate to evolve your brain. In the process, you must restrain yourself from the typical behaviors and maintain your thoughts on what you're doing, without wandering to extraneous stimuli so your actions are aligned with your intentions. Just as you might have experienced when you first learned to cook Thai food, play golf, dance the salsa, drive a stick shift, the newness of the endeavor will require you to practice this ability continually, training both the mind and the body to memorize each step. Remember, the most types of instructions are formatted in a bite-sized chunk so that the mind and body can work together. Once you get it, all of the individual steps you kept reviving and reviewing will merge into one smooth process. The methodical, linear approach seamlessly flows into a holistic, effortless, unified demonstration. This point of personal ownership, at times, the effort can be tedious. But if you persist with a certain amount of will and energy, I promise you will enjoy the results. When you know that you know how to do something, you're on your way to mastering it. I'm overjoyed to say that many people around the world are already using this knowledge in this book to demonstrate changes in their life. It is my sincere passion that you, as well, break the habit of being yourself and create the life that you desire. That being said, that is the end of the introduction. Let's get started. Once again, this video is broadcasted live from my living room, Fireside Chats. I'm dedicating this to my 3 children, Nico, Atia, and Axel. Daddy loves you. Please stay tuned, pay attention, and look in the mail for your books. Aloha.